So this is my favourite fruit. This is jackfruit, which is the fruit of Artocarpus heterophyllus, and I am going to show you how to butcher it. So for butchering a jackfruit, I like to cut it off the tree a couple of days beforehand to give it a chance for the latex to leach out. So you're going to cut the stem as close as possible to the fruit itself and then put it upside down somewhere. I have to do that in a metal cage because indoors the smell is very distracting and outdoors the smell attracts a lot of things which come and eat it these days. So it's best to have something to contain it for that, and you don't want it to be sitting too wet in there. You do want it out of water, which can be a problem because they tend to ripen in the rainy season. Then you're going to wait for a nice open period of time. You're going to get some oil, you get some bowls, and you're going to get a knife. Now that oil is because even though you have drained the latex out after that, you still have quite a lot in there, and it's still going to get quite sticky, and you do not want your hands and knife to take weeks to get clean again, because that can happen. So you're going to cover your hands and knife with the oil, and then you're going to cut across all the way over the base of the jackfruit from both sides, and then you're going to, at the sort of crossing point right on the bottom of that jackfruit, you're going to open it up and you're going to see the big round freshy fruit pods in amongst what looks like tagliatelle, and then you're going to try and take out those pods. And you're going to have to cut the tagliatelle away from the stem itself quite a lot. And as that comes away, you will get a little bit of latex on you. You don't want to cut into the stem because then you'll get a lot of latex on you. As those come away and you cut further and further along the stem, those 4 leaves you've cut with the cross, because you want to cut about 2 centimeters in just to make sure you've gone through the thick leathery skin, you will gradually find more and more of those fruits. If you've got the jackfruit at ideal ripeness, there shouldn't be anything rotten, but if you find it comes away from the skin with no resistance at all, that's probably started to go putrid. It won't taste as good, so I personally wouldn't eat that. Dogs will very much enjoy it if you have fruit-loving dogs like we have. All chickens, wildlife will happily take it if you don't have a compost heap to chuck it on. I do find this method gets a lot less messy than using a large knife to chop it up, because usually chopping it up into big chunks, you're going to go right into the stem, you're going to get a lot of latex everywhere, and also then trying to keep the fruit itself from coming into contact with the surface you're working on, and it is sticky. It will pick up everything that touches it. Having the leaves like this means that you've always got something between it and the surface, so even if you're working outside, which you often want to because it's a big and fairly messy task, this to me works better than that. Inside the jackfruit, apart from the stem and the skin, you are going to find 4 basic different things. So you're going to find the fruit itself, which is this lovely yellow pod-like thing, the outside flesh of which is very tasty and soft and sweet, but that is often surrounded by what looks like tagliatelle, which is basically, as far as I know, the unfertilized parts of the flower, which form this nice little sort of barrier to keep the fruit in place and keep the skin attached to the stem. Those are edible, but once the jackfruit is this ripe, I find they're a little bit more work than they're worth to get off. If you want to eat them, you're going to use that when the jackfruit is a little bit greener and you're not really looking for the fruity flavor, and then you're just going to chop it up where the nuts are still small enough that the skin isn't going to be really in the way, and you're going to cook that usually in savory dishes rather than sweet things. Then you're going to find inside that little pod, you're going to find a nut, which is again in its own little sheath. The nut itself is edible. The sheath isn't inedible, but it's not pleasant. It's very chewy, it's very gristly, it's not really worthwhile, so I discard that. It also tends to be the part that attracts the most flies, so if you're doing this at a time of year when it is hot and there's a lot of flies around, I would take that out as quickly as possible, because then you're going to keep the flies off the fruit for as long as possible. And then you're going to want to cook the nuts if you eat them, but the fruit itself can be eaten raw, it can be cooked, it can be made into ice cream, it can be made into jam. It's really versatile, it's really fantastic tasting. Trying to describe its flavor is a bit of a losing game because it's kind of pineapple-y and banana-y and jackfruity, basically. It's this rich, pungent, sweet, slightly tart, but not offensively so flavor. You do get a lot of different varieties of jackfruit these days with very different flavors, and some of them can be more pungent, some of them can be sweeter, some of them can be a little bit more tart. A lot of them have softer flesh than this. I don't really like that. I quite like the slightly firmer flesh. If you freeze this, you will end up with a soft flesh, and it can keep very well in the freezer, and they are a large fruit, so eating it within the week or so it will keep in the fridge can be a challenge. But if you do want to save the texture, you can either use it quickly or dry it.